I hope that this what if will not have a frosty reception. Hey guys, MasakoX here. With What Ifs, you can cover a wide variety of topics and explore different facets of different characters and situations. For example, in our What If Such and Such Turned Good scenarios, we usually see a character who never became a good guy, but then could have chances to change their tune in ways that would best suit them, instead of just shoehorning it in via artificial and disingenuous means. Something that could actually happen and something you can go, you know what, that seems reasonable, it makes sense. As a result, it means that you can get behind it and thusly become invested. That's what happened in the What If for Freeza turning good, but this time around, we can change it up a little and talk about something that did happen in Dragon Ball Super with Frieza's Universe 6 counterpart, Frost. What about him, Masako? Well, aside from this shot of two bulked up Icelings, which I somehow find utterly hilarious even to this day, I wish to discuss something that was alluded to in the Universe 6 tournament. Frost, when we were first introduced to him, initially seemed like a generic copy of Frieza, only more blue. However, when we got to see him a little more, we had some kind of fascination towards him. He was very respectful and courteous like Frieza, but this time his charisma felt different. He seemed more amiable than Frieza, more compliant, a nice guy. For a start, to even get him into the contest and play ball was a difference in of itself. So today we're going to be talking about something that seemed much more likely than our own evil, self-obsessed and ugly tyrant becoming good. Today, we're going to tell you the story about what would happen if Frost actually was good. You see, when we first saw Frost, we thought he would be the complete opposite of Frieza, and our first impressions supported our notions. It was really interesting to see. However, we need to establish some ground rules before we start our story, and it's something quite important and something we like to do with our stories. That way you can just enjoy the story and not be left in too much of a flap. We need to initially establish who Frost is and who he isn't. Most importantly, his status. You see, you think he is like Frieza in Universe 6's Emperor, but that's not necessarily true. In fact, there is only one source that cites him as the Emperor of Universe 6, being the March issue of V-Jump from 2016, when we first found out about Universe 6's contestants. It reads thusly: Frost, huh? This guy looks familiar. If that's what you were thinking, then you're right on the money. This guy is the Emperor of Universe 6 and has something to hide. Does that mean that this is his first form? Okay, that's fair, we get the basics before we begin the story proper, but this doesn't seem to hold any water later on. It kind of resonates within the manga and the anime. Well, if he was the Emperor, no other member of Team Universe 6 seems to treat him as such, nor does he convey himself as a superior at any point. He just acts like another guy in the team. When he is on the run in later episodes, it doesn't really feel like there is a power vacuum, that a powerful empire has fallen or anything like that. Life seems to be just carrying on about his business as usual, with just a cowled Frosty boy hiding like his life depended on it. Our best guess is about this weird choice of career was that part of Frost ruling over Universe 6 is either a case of an early unused concept of Toriyama's, which was either forgotten or dropped by the crew, or said crew behind V-Jump had a case of some sort of miscommunication, or they jumped to conclusions, simply because there was the Frieza connection. He does control some parts of the universe though. What he was instead of a traditional emperor, he ruled in the seas of social media. Frost was a celebrity, a local hero within circles of Universe 6 societies, but he was a trickster. He was the type of a hero who started fires just to then extinguish them later on. Not exactly terrible or evil like his Universe 7 equivalent, but he was deceitful, so neither was he a nice person. In the series, when I found out that he's still a bad guy, he's kind of like Frieza, I was actually really disappointed. Having a nice guy Frieza would have been a really nice subversion on the norm and a curiosity for Vegeta and Goku to see how they would get along, and then we could have seen a noble Frost chastising a sneaky Frieza. It's a real darn shame and a missed opportunity, but could you imagine what would have been if things hadn't worked out that way? So, let's do some creative rewinding and revisit Frost's actions on planet Mayonnaise, shall we? As we had gathered from Frost's initial exposition, the planet was getting severely attacked by space pirates. Already this was bad enough, but as we later found out in the original story, these space pirates were originally part of Frost's group and were essentially actors for the purposes of making their boss look good. But this time though, it's not staged. Instead of them acting for Frost this time, it was a case of mutiny. Being this kind of hero, or captain, was very expensive work, and lately, things had begun to dry up. Their pirating ways were too effective. They had basically ran out of funds to pillage in their sector, and since Frost's pockets of his own were running dry, and very quickly, his people decided to, well, force him to find a way to pay them by opening fire towards him. Frost was very disappointed by this turn of events, but not all that surprised. It was a sad day for him. His family had cast him out, so it seems. Frost, still in his first form, is forced to run away from his own crew that outnumber him greatly. He could have used his final form against them and show them who was boss, but that would have been too easy and also too terrible to imagine. He doesn't want to do that. He's been with them for a long time. He had ended someone in that form, and he was in no way inclined to have the same happen again. Not only that, but while on the planet that he has fled to, he sees a gut-wrenching thing occur. He sees his own troops attacking the people of the planet. At this point of the story, Frost cannot be considered a fully good person yet, but one thing's for sure, he never intended to attack innocent civilians without reason. Sure, he did cause trouble, but he would fix it, eventually. These guys though, his old crew, they had no intention of any sort of reparation. His pirate crew was originally meant to only properly attack military ships or just threaten and scare merchants, saber-rattling, without actually hurting them. It's at that point that he has had enough and will not stand for this insubordination. He decides to fight against them, and even though he's quite powerful, the soldiers are many in number, and he is just one frost demon. That is until Kaba shows up. Never thought I'd actually ever say that. Well, okay, why is he here? Well, remember, the Saiyans of Universe 6 are like the protectors of said realm, and are seen as a just and noble society, unlike the mud hut dwelling monkeys of Universe 7. Kaba got sent to Mayonnaise by the Sadala Defense Force elite. Luckily, for this story's main dude, Kaba doesn't recognize Frost as the leader of the pirates. Hey, you're doing great against these evil doers, stranger. Can I give you a hand? Frost is pretty surprised to see a Saiyan here of all things, but hey, help is help. Not only that, but fortunate to his further development, his infamous and underhanded form of tactics had not reached planet Sadala. Yet. I am Frost, and I am trying to stop these rascally pirates, of course, but I will accept your help, brave Saiyan. Now aiding one another, the two make light work of these pirates on the planet's surface, but the pirates up in the mothership, guided by their new leader Sharbat, decide to evacuate the remaining crew to regroup and then take stock of what had happened and the fact that their old leader had shacked up with the goody-goody Saiyans. Never thought I'd actually say that either. As a result of losing his old ride, Frost is marooned on Mayonnaise, with Kaba being his only companion for miles around. That being said, things do begin to get more exciting. For fending off the majority of the pirates, the pair sort of become local sensations and dubbed heroes, which allows Frost to use his charismatic talents to boost the morale of the people after their planet had been ransacked. For the first time in a while, Frost genuinely wanted to see these people avenged. He had longed to change his outlook into a sort of going through the motions type of thing. It made it so he could detach himself from their plight and his constant breaking and fixing. Now though, he had broken that cycle and now simply just wanted to fix. Kaba is pretty impressed by his new friend's prowess and ability to bolster the populace, thinking that he was a very seasoned and experienced hero. Well, not exactly Kaba. The Mayonnaisans also offer Frost an apartment to stay in as a mark of respect, and also give him his own ship. Frost is taken aback by this generosity. Any sign of him ever regressing back to his crew now, long gone. He had gotten the bug for purely being a hero instead of appearing to be one. Kaba asks if he will return to his own planet in time, but Frost gets a little hesitant. He chooses to lie to Kaba, saying that, oh, his original home was destroyed by those pirates, and that in fact, he had just escaped from their custody. That's why he was here. He was running for his life before turning around and facing them head on. Now this makes the young Saiyan admire Frost even more, and so he decides there and then that he will introduce Frost to the rest of the Sadala Defense Force as a potential ally in this sector. Frost likes that idea. Right now, he needs new powerful friends to get back at his old crew, or at least defend himself. For the time being though, he will use his new base of operations on Mayonnaise as his home, but he decides to take up Kaba's offer eventually and visit Sadala. There, he is introduced to Renzo, Caulifla's older brother, who is not yet retired in this version of the universe. After hearing the tale of Frost, he is pretty impressed with his deeds. Frost reveals that the pirates still have something that he holds very dear, a keepsake from his original planet. Frost Planet 1. Renzo's confused. He'd never heard of such a world. Frost is getting a little uncomfortable. Had he been rumbled already? He quickly elaborates, saying, that it only shows how cruel those pirates were to even erase his world from archives. Oh no! Now this gets through to Renzo and he accepts Frost's origin story. Whew, that was too close. After that, the Sadalan Saiyans offer Frost an honorary place in their squad and offer him some work alongside Kaba. Since the two of them were so good on Mayonnaise, they basically become buddy cops. However, this is not the most ideal of situations for our main guy. Frost isn't very thrilled about this. He didn't want to be a painted target for his old comrades, but right now, he decides to play along. He needs protection and time to regroup. And wouldn't you know it, he begins to like his new gig. Together with the Defense Force, Frost is able to genuinely save numerous villages, cities, and even a couple of planets from various types of ne'er-do-wells. He starts to feel more and more satisfied with this passing encounter. On top of all of this, his bombastic personality, as well as sheer charisma, something that he shares with Freeza, makes him much more approachable than most of the Sadala Defense Force. This makes him a spokesperson, an immediate hit with the locals, and increasing his fame and respect with peoples across the universe. Whenever the SDF showed up, they would ask if Frost was there to help. It would rub some of the members up the wrong way, but whenever Frost was there, oh man, the peoples would be much more helpful. Frost likes to be in the spotlight, but it's more than that though now. He now enjoys simply making people happy. This means that his stay with the Saiyans starts to slowly increase, longer than he had originally anticipated. But then again, becoming famous isn't all that good for his outlook, especially if your previous crew starts to learn more and more of your new good deeds. They felt they'd been betrayed by their own leader. They wanted to go after him right there and then and make him suffer for his treachery. But for now, they decided to play it cool. Sharbat cannot hold a candle against Frost in a straight-up fight, though he is aware that there is one way to skin a cat. One day, he will sabotage his previous master's reputation, leaving him nowhere to go, and ultimately doomed to a life of poverty and strife. Later on, after many more successful acts of heroism, someone else takes an interest in Frost. Champa is seeking for the strongest fighters in his universe, and he has found somebody who fits the bill quite nicely, as well as being very good for optics. Frost is a little panicked at first, hearing terrible things about this deity and how he treated his lessers, but he quickly realizes that the Fat Cat does offer an opportunity for himself and Kaba. It's even more protection. Champa then reveals that he wants to challenge his twin brother Beerus from Universe 7 to a tournament. They both will choose their champions, and Champa is strongly considering both Frost and Kaba to lead his team against Universe 7. Wow, what an honor! Well, his attendant Vardos is doing most of the heavy lifting here, but for these two, it doesn't really make much of a difference from what's being said. They were being called upon by the cat upstairs. That's gotta look good for the old resume. The two friends feel extremely flattered at this point, and they decide to train really hard for the tournament and not let their boss down. One of the fighters that will join their team is going to be the legendary assassin, Hit, someone of whom Frost is afraid of the most, as his reputation is very well known. The odds are that if anybody knew about his past antics and lying nature, it would be this guy. He knows everything about the criminal underworld. He hopes against hope that he won't recognize him. Unfortunately for Frost, Hit isn't all that bothered about being all noble or inquisitive. The man himself isn't really talkative to anyone, and doesn't really want to be sociable with his team or other fighters that were recruited. As far as Hit was concerned, he was merely working, making donuts. The other two, Batama and Automagetta, are much more civil with Kaba and Frost. In fact, it turns out Batamo has recently become a big fan of Frost, and even asked him for an autograph.
It's such a pleasure to fight alongside you, buddy.
No, the pleasure's all mine, Batamo. We shall do our universe proud.
Man, you're so cool, Frost.
The four of them then train together to prepare better for the tournament, while Hit, he's just mostly there, glaring at Frost from time to time. At one point, Frost decides to test the waters, clear the air as it were. Hello. I take it you're not really friendly, are you? Hit looks at Frost and scoffs.
I don't really care. You seem to be having a good time playing the hero.
Just that mere aside sent chills up Frost's spine. What do you mean? Hit turns to Frost, looming over him, exuding all of his intimidating nature.
I know who you really are. I know what you're all about. I've got my eye on you.
Hit has come alive, seeming to enjoy the nervous tension coming from his prey.
I couldn't care less about whatever you're trying to pull off right now, but I have something to tell you. There is a hefty price on your head. That's all you need to know.
Hit puts his hand in his pocket and simply walks away. leaving Frost to stew over this. Was he bluffing? Were his kind capable of that? Was it Sharbat that put the hit out on him? How did he get the money? It's clear to him that the tournament is the only thing that is keeping Hit from taking his life right now. Should he tell Champa about this? No, he wouldn't care. The only thing that Frost can do right now is to show Champa how useful he can be. We resume the story back at the tournament grounds, where the Universe 6 team are getting properly acquainted, with Batamo, by the way, being a big fan of Frost's former heroics. And meanwhile, Kaba is taking in the revelation that there were Saiyans indeed in Universe 7 as well. And they certainly looked quite different, very mean, not like them at all. As the young man is surveying them, Frost is giving them a glance as well, and isn't all that pleased to see this intense looking group of fighters. Not only that, but that short spiky haired one over there, that Saiyan from the other universe, is watching him very closely and shrewdly. That look, that was no resting monkey face or anything like that. That gaze was that of pure malice. What kind of person was he? How bitter was he? He didn't want to know, but wait, is that part of Hit's plan? Oh, did Sharbat, his former ally, actually manage to employ someone from the other universe to end him as well as Hit, coming in from both sides? No, this is simply not possible. There has to be something else to all of this, surely. Keen to try and dispel this feeling of dread and foreboding and paranoia, Frost carefully moves to the others in this party. They have two Saiyans, he was all too aware of that chestnut, one Namekian fellow who looked equally as mean, then there was that pig blob thing over there. That creature looked very unusual indeed. He didn't remember anything like that in his universe. However, Frost did breathe a sigh of relief when he realised that that being, which is Majin Buu, was in no condition to fight. It had simply fallen asleep during the exam. So, I guess that means that bee fighter gone, one down? Then there's that thing with the weird nips. You shall ignore that. Whatever the situation, Frost has to show his usefulness or else risk the ire of Champa. Are you alright, buddy? Kaba tries to comfort his friend upon seeing Frost shaking slightly in his seat after the written test was over. Yeah, I'm just seeing beings from another universe. It makes me feel pretty surreal, don't you think? To think that there are more of your kind in another part of reality. It's mad. He nervously laughs. Carver then realizes the gravitas as well. You're telling me. Those two guys over there seem to be saying, from what I could gather talking to them, I mean, they're apparently the only two pure-blooded Saiyans left in their universe. Can you believe it? Their Sadala fell in some sort of mysterious circumstance. I also heard that those two are crazy strong. Some kind of hidden power, I think. Frost then asks Kaba if there is any reason that the little one over there was looking fire at him. Kaba shakes his head and he doesn't know. What about the Namekian? Anything different about them? Frost eyes Piccolo for a moment. Kaba takes a second look. He seems normal to me. Like our Namekians. Maybe a different shade of green, I don't know. I mean, you can't miss them though. They're green. I've met some of them before, but they can be pretty tough. But I don't think that this one is stronger than you or I, my friend. Frost forces a smile. That's something in their favor. Thank you for believing in me, my friend. We should introduce ourselves properly before the show starts, right? Good idea! I wonder what happened to the other Saiyans in their timeline. Before Frost could gird his loins and finish his train of thought, Kaba was gone. He was already talking with the two strangers. Frost, reluctantly, stomps after Kaba with quiet indignation. He stops for a moment, a little too nervous to speak directly to them, but he's also trying to avoid Hit for a while, so he settles with watching Kaba talk to his new friends from afar. Then he has an idea. Something that could make him effective in the tournament. He remembers that he has poison needles. Maybe if he could use them. He looks to them again for a moment. That could work. While Lord Champa doesn't seem like the kind of being that would mind him using this underhanded tactic in cheating, there is another factor to consider here. If, by any chance, Hit saw him breaking the rules of the tournament, well, he might feel ever more inclined to eliminate him after the show was over, when nobody was looking. And besides, he doesn't really have to try that much. All he needs to do for Champs is to put on a good show. There is no chance that these Saiyans can beat Hit. They will win as a team, and that's all that matters. The Saiyans might have a chance against him or Kaba, but Hit, oh, that guy's on a whole other level. So, when the fight starts, he observes the whole duel between the Saiyan known as Son Goku and Batamo with confidence. At first, Frost in fact seems disappointed with the Saiyan's strength, as he seems to have trouble fighting Batamo. Well, I guess he isn't smart enough to deal with Batamo's little gimmick. All he is doing the same thing again and again. Kaba, however, being a Saiyan, is not quite so sure. Why so serious, Kaba? This Saiyan is a buffoon thinking that will work, Frost asks his friend. Don't be so sure. He's sussing Batamo out, I know it. Frost looks again with this new perspective, and then sees what Kaba is seeing. Is that person having fun and toying with Batamo? Well, his overconfidence is going to be his downfall. But for now, Batamo is held off of the ring. This was almost clever. The next fight would be between himself and whoever Universe 7 decides to send in, as in this version of the story, the fighters are allowed to switch if they haven't been knocked out. So while this Son Goku fellow is pretty eager to challenge our hero, the Namekian steps in and asks to have a chance with that one. They both bow to each other and the Namekian introduces himself as Piccolo. He tosses down his weighted clothing and Frost allows him to do so. When the gong rings, he charges towards his opponent, who vanishes and starts charging some sort of attack. Well, our space pirate surely has to interrupt this, and he sends several beams towards his opponent. But the Namekian, understandably, dodges them skillfully. Then he starts using multiform. As he is not choosing to use his needles this time, having thought against it obviously, Frost has to be more cautious. He powers up to his second form to be able to handle multi-directional attacks and starts to dart around the ring to try and quickly find the master copy, the right Piccolo. After a little bit of a scuffle and some minor errors, he does find the right afterimage. They face each other in a pretty deadly flurry, but Frost had been training a lot with Kaba recently and is a little bit too much for Piccolo. He is able to knock the Namekian out of the ring fair and square. After that, he helps him up, and reluctantly, Piccolo accepts his defeat.
That was impressive.
Likewise, you're unlike any Namekians I've met. Tell me, why is your comrade looking at me like that way?
Oh, ignore him. He always looks that way. You just happen to resemble someone from our universe he doesn't like, that's all.
Oh?
I wouldn't be flattered if I were you. Your doppelganger was a villain that destroyed his planet. But don't worry about him. He's been put in his place. And besides, I can feel you're very different from him.
Frost felt like his stomach started to head towards his throat. Well, thank you, Piccolo. Whew! He had made a good impression with the big green one. The next battle is the spiky head Saiyan, and yeah, Frost feels the animosity from the first moment the warrior sets his eyes on him. That's all Vegeta could say. Hello? Excuse me? Have I done something wrong to disrespect you, sir? I don't believe we've had the pleasure in meeting prior to this encounter.
The only pleasure I have in meeting you is to tear you apart.
Well, he's quite the grumpy one, isn't he? In an instant, Vegeta powers up, which makes his hair turn golden, his power skyrocketing. Frost is almost knocked out of the ring purely by the aura that is generated. One thing was for sure, he needs to transform himself, and do it pretty quickly. Very few people had seen Frost's final form before, and rarely has he had to resort to it, but he gives everything he can to try and block the incoming attacks. This Saiyan is tough, but in his final form, Frost shows a lot of resilience, something that despite his rudeness, this Vegeta fellow seems to tolerate. As Frost begins to get some hits onto his opponents and even starts to get equal footing with Vegeta, he just merely smirks. Now, his hair starts to glow with a bluish flash, and yeah, Frost gets totally dominated. He has no chance. The Saiyan simply knocks him out of the ring without a second thought, nor any further words exchanged. So, yeah, it turns out he was just toying with Frost, who looks to Vegeta, walking away back to his team.
Well, you're unlike Frieza, that's for sure.
Is that a good thing or a bad thing? Sir? Sir? No, Vegeta was not playing ball. He wasn't saying anything else. Alright, this one must be the stronger one, right? It can deal with him, for sure. For sure. Kaba runs to his friend. Hey, you did great, Frost. Why'd you get some rest? Yeah, Frost is still a little bit shaken up by the strength of this one, but he could do with a rest. The next fight with Megetta is a little bit more entertaining, though the poor guy really didn't deserve to be insulted like that. But despite this, Frost feels that Hit is watching him the whole time, not breaking his gaze for anything, but he is also not saying anything. He tries to focus on watching the Megetta fight, and after that, watching Kaba learning the tricks of the trade of Super Saiyan with Vegeta. But even with that, his buddy isn't able to handle him. Frost overhears that he is interested in seeing Sadala someday, that Vegeta, and this starts to make sense. He is not after him personally, that one. He just resembles a villain who destroyed his homeworld. Turns out the Namekian was telling the truth. Well, that's a relief. Another relief is that Hit is going to stop staring at him because he will be the one fighting Vegeta for now. And just like in the original, he wins. Well, Hit has taken down their strongest warrior. Surely the other two are not as strong. Though this Vegeta surely has the heart of the warrior. I don't know, Frost. Kaba looks at his friend. This Goku fellow looks almost as powerful. What comes next is probably the most impressive fight Frost has ever witnessed. That Son Goku is going toe-to-toe with Hit. But yeah, we're all familiar with that fight, so I won't go into detail. It ends like the original, with Champa and Beerus bickering amongst themselves, which irritates Goku and Hit. When Frost then sees Monarca, he doesn't know what to think, but he might be the only one realizing that Hit is just giving up the fight, instead of playing along only to mess around with Champa. Did Hit really have to do that? Did he just cost them their victory on purpose? Champa is absolutely furious, not just with Hit, but with everyone. As far as he was concerned, they all disappointed, and he is ready to erase them on the spot. Frost bemoans this. He had done everything he could, and because of Hit's sudden rebellious action, they were all getting it in the neck. That is until a being called Zeno shows up. It quickly becomes clear to Frost that this whole Omni King is a very important figure. So important, in fact, that even the two Cat brothers fear him deeply. Interesting. In the midst of the whole chaos, Hit moves away from Champa and whispers something to Frost. I wouldn't go home if I were you. And just walks off, taking his commission, which was the travel cube, with him. Frost doesn't care, though, to watch him leave, but he is left with the words that Hit said to him for a long time. What does he mean by that? What kind of threat was that? Is he just waiting in the wings for him to leave the tournament area and then pounce on him unawares? How can he live like this? What can he do? Suddenly, he spots Kaba and Vegeta talking about visiting each other's universe again. That's it. Frost decides now is the moment to interject. Say, Kaba, our new friends seem to be a little low on the Saiyan peacekeeper front. Not that quantity is better than quality, of course, as I'm sure you two can handle any evildoer coming your way, but wouldn't it just be awesome if we could learn something from one another? Vegeta narrows his gaze. Kaba then suddenly becomes all bashful in front of Vegeta. Without knowing it, Frost had basically made him become Vegeta's direct student, instead of in the original where it was sort of more of an irreverence and it didn't go anywhere. I would love that, Vegeta. I would love to train under you. Vegeta thinks about this for a moment and then looks to the side. I could show you a thing or two, but that one, forget it. Goku then grins widely. Hey, I can help that guy. I always wondered what it would be like to train with Freeza if he turned good. Vegeta scoffs at both Goku and Frost. Just remember, if you are planning anything funny, you saw how easily I can end you. Not at all, sir. No, not at all. I'm not. Champa is, of course, furious that these two pretty strong beings were leaving his universe, but Frost manages to convince him that their training will allow them to become stronger themselves for Universe 6. They can come back and pass down what they've learnt to other fighters, including in Kaba's world. That is enough to convince Champa, and he waves them off without a second glance. So, Frost shall live. For now. Those Saiyans can keep him safe. He is not aware, however, that Hit is watching him still from a distance. It's very hard to say what are his thoughts right now on the matter. Frost and Kaba's arrival on Earth was a very surprising little interlude prior to what we expect in the Goku Black arc. Not much has actually happened after the Universe 6 tournament, after the abandoned results of the supposed tie of the contest. So, our Saiyans are actually sort of listening, keen to hear them out about what these newcomers have to say. Whilst Vegeta is naturally suspicious of our pale friend, despite having proved himself to be somewhat decent during the whole affair, as in he did have the poison technique but he never resorted to, nor did he wish to, Goku is completely convinced by the arrival of them, and their request to train. I mean, of course it would be, it's Goku. This apparently fulfilling his long-time dream of training with Frieza. Vegeta looks to Goku and is completely bemused with this weird fantasy to train with, quite possibly, their greatest enemy. He never got that. But Goku then explains to his friend that Frieza had the most potential out of all their previous challenges. Think about it. Frieza started off with that kind of power, and he never lifted a finger beforehand. Well, maybe once. He shudders a little bit, remembering the destruction of planet Vegeta, and how Frieza basically just did that with his finger. Vegeta looked quite sour, and so Goku continued hastily. And, look at him now! He's gotten so much stronger in just months of active training, and if Frost here is anything like Frieza, then his gains will be incredible. Damn, he seems like a nice guy. He slaps Frost on the back, the recipient relieved to be so quickly accepted by this prodigious fighter. Thank you, Son Goku. I won't let you down. Vegeta shrugs, accepting Goku's point of potential, but it's still something that he couldn't quite get entirely behind. Oh well, Vegeta had the Saiyan Kaba to train with. He'd call this a compromise or a distraction, depends on his mood. As you might probably expect, Goku is beginning his official sparring sessions with our protagonist. He wasn't just training the individual wholesale, he was also making him a guest at his place, and of course, without telling Chi-Chi first. Frost became a guest in his home, but initially he didn't feel like one. He felt like he was being interrogated by all concerned. The only person that sort of got on with him and didn't ask him so many questions from the start was Goku's wife. She thought he was very nice and was quite civilized, sort of like what Frieza was in our alternative What If story, What If Frieza Had a Son. You can check that out up top. I feel Frost would be just as courteous here. And that was the only positive for a while at the Son family residence, because Frost had to live through tons of suspicious and intrusive comments and questions from the two kids, Goten and Trunks, seemingly sons of Goku and Vegeta. Nearly all of the time they would be asking very inane and repetitive questions, and naturally, of course, the biggie, what's it like to be a good Frieza? Frost was trying to keep his cool, not wanting to cause problems with Goku, but he still felt very bad being asked this. He had gotten tired of being compared to Frieza. He hadn't even met the fellow. How would he know what it was like? It was kind of annoying, and many times he just wanted to tell those runts to be quiet and stop asking, really look nettled, but he would also take a deep breath, remember where he was, remember the context of his surroundings, and pause. He knew these twerps weren't being malicious, they meant well, they were just genuinely inquisitive. They weren't trying to probe him for information for any nefarious purposes against him. Ultimately, he kept up appearance, and he was patient with their questions. Also, he didn't want to risk making Son Goku's life mate angry, but he was already off to a good start anyway, so he needn't worry. Still, he didn't have much time to think about much else at the moment, because Goku had set the pace to be pretty fast and merciless. One day, Goku asked Frost the question that he'd been longing to ask, hoping that would make the training gains even faster. He was very excited to ask this. So, can you do the gold thing? Asked Goku in a rather enthusiastic manner, but the response was not what he had expected. Instead of getting a fervent nod and an immediate demonstration, Frost seemed like he was totally baffled, utterly confused. Gold thing? I don't know what you mean. Goku elaborated. Oh, you know, the guy from my universe, Frieza. Frost rolled his eyes, again with the Frieza. Right. He was able to do it. The golden thing. He turned gold and used God Ki. It was really cool. But he hadn't thought it through, though. Sort of like he did when we first fought on Namek. Maybe he can make it better, but, you know, he's dead that moment. Again. So... Frost was pretty sure he didn't want to hear the rest of the story. But not wanting to disappoint his mentor, Frost acted in a polite manner to an otherwise irksome situation. I hate to burst your bubble, Son Goku, but no. I'm afraid that I'm not familiar with that transformation. My fourth form, the one that you see before you, is the peak of my capabilities at this time in Universe 6. It's as far as I can go. I do hope that this hasn't cast doubt on my abilities. Frost looked very downbeat, thinking that the same was either going to be, at best, sad, or at worst, disgusted, wanting to kick him out of his own home. But Goku laughed. Frost was, once again, confused at this reaction. Why is my predicament funny, Son Goku? Oh boy, you have a lot to learn about here, buddy. If you put your mind to it and train,
You can get that golden power in no time. You got me finding your corner. Here, try to avoid my attacks.
And then, without any warning, Goku went all Super Saiyan Blue on him. At first, Frost felt that it was impossible to dodge any of these attacks. This was the power that had given Hit a run for his money. How could he possibly answer to this formidable power? And while he was still being hit pretty hard by Goku, he felt that the Saiyan was still going easy on him. But nevertheless, despite his doubt within himself, he did manage to dodge a few of the attacks. I mean, that's got to count for something, right? Well, it seems like Goku wasn't letting him win. Goku had noticed that Frost seemed pretty grim. When they had finished, he took him aside and gave him a pat on the back.
Hey, don't worry. You did well, pal. It's a lot to take in at first. I remember my first time training with Whis. I thought the power I had gotten fighting Beerus would be enough to impress, but boy was I wrong. I did terribly. I couldn't get anywhere near him. Still can't really. It takes some time to notice improvements, but I believe in you, Frost. You do? Sure thing, buddy.
Frost was utterly astonished. He hadn't expected Saiyans to be so nice. It was as if he was talking to Kaba, that same chirpy attitude. Nothing like Vegeta's grump face at all. Son Goku was many things, but Frost had to admit that despite his sometimes irritating nature and unnecessarily chirpy optimism, he was a pretty encouraging mentor. Something rubbed off on him. He had succeeded in being retained by the Monkey Man. Later on, he was met by Goku's older son, Son Gohan, to do some sightseeing around the planet. Frost was surprised to not only get some good training in, but also to have a chance to witness some more of what this world had to offer. It was nice to have a little break. They also caught up with Kaba, who looked exhausted, but pretty happy. Kaba was pleased to see Frost, having not had the chance to talk since they started their training.
Hey, Frost! I got so much to tell you. Vegeta, he's amazing. He's shown me so many transformations that we Saiyans can do, and he said that if I really put my mind to it and I don't start slacking, I can do that too.
All of this information was, without intending to, making Frost feel bad. How could he compare with all of that progression that Kaba had done?
Well,
Frost started reluctantly mumbling to his friend.
I've not got any new forms, like yourself.
But he remembered Goku's kind words, also being glad that his species were quite durable after all this training.
It's been tough, like your efforts have been, I imagine. But I was told that I was making progress.
Come now, try to keep your mind off your training today, you two. There's more to life than that. You need to relax every once in a while, he smirked. Frost nodded in agreement.
Agreed. I can subscribe to that statement, Mr. Son Gohan.
You should also subscribe to the channel, by the way. After that, Gohan showed the two of them some parks and museums around West City, Nikki Town, and he brought them some Earth snacks, with ice cream being an absolute hit with Frost.
I've never... What are these? They're remarkable.
Oh? You never tried ice cream before? Frost elaborated.
Well, I sort of remember something like this, but it seemed that the secret of making this had perished together with our Earth when they scorched themselves. But since Lord Beerus has... Oh, there's hope after all.
Gohan laughed. It's not particularly hard to make, you know. I can give you two the recipe before you leave. Frost then got a little reflective. After all he had seen, he didn't actually want to think about leaving at the moment, so he quickly changed the subject.
So, Mr. Son Gohan, you're a half Saiyan, right?
Gohan looked like he had conversational whiplash. That was not a very well thought out segue, but luckily Gohan didn't take offense to this and told him his story, including the fight with a creature named Cell and how he himself had semi-retired from fighting.
I mean, yeah, it was fun to bond with my dad and do it when I was younger, but now I'm a father myself. I realize there's more to life than I need to think about. I want to find a good balance, but I am aware of my responsibilities as a person, other than saving the world, like building a family of my own.
Frost thought that sounded nice, but right now, he couldn't quite understand as much as he would have liked to. Right now, for him, fighting was his only option for survival. That's why, in the following weeks, he tried his best to get really strong. He still wasn't much in terms of directly and convincingly attacking his mentor, but he had gotten much better at dodging at least, and avoiding Super Saiyan Blue's more intense attacks. On one hand, he thought that he was sort of cheating. Maybe he was just simply learning Goku's fighting pattern, but on the other hand, this might actually be really good training. If you think about it, if Goku can dodge hit, then him doing so to Goku a fair few times might give him a chance to counter the mercenary. He'd also learnt how to live with these people, including helping tend to their farm and giving Goku some breaks to train on his own. It was very weird for Frost to see how modestly they lived despite Chi-Chi's father being rich, as well as their track record of saving the world. Surely with the power Son Goku and his sons had, they would be absolute stars, like he was back in Universe 6. One morning, Frost decided to ask Chi-Chi about that, and he was lucky that he'd gotten on her good side for being helpful all of these weeks. She calmly explained that they genuinely quite liked the quiet life out in the sticks. There was something about living out in the middle of nowhere that was calming. It felt natural to them. It was part of who they were. It really helped them clear their minds, which led in turn to better lifestyles and better training for Goku. She reckoned that there would be too much attention if they lived close to a city or maybe in a town. You know firsthand how reckless Goku can get when training. That was true. In a weird way, Frost understood now. He learnt to appreciate that. They really were good people. A little irritating, but good. The next day, after a particularly hard day's work in the field, Goku and Goten, accompanied by Piccolo, decided to take Frost to Capture Corp to see his friend. It had been a few days since he had last talked to Kaba, so Goku was sure that they would naturally want to catch up. However, there was soon to be a more pressing matter at hand to deal with. They were pretty shocked to discover a strange vessel around with the word Hope written on the hull. Trunks, the present one, had told them all that someone that looks just like him is inside. Goku, knowing who that might be, excitedly flies inside with Frost and the rest following. And wouldn't you know it, there is a young man that looks like an older version of Trunks. But instead of a warm welcome, he attacks Goku. Frost, not having a clue who this person is, immediately defends his mentor, but the young man then goes for him instead, thinking that this guy is Frieza.
I don't care how you got here, but I will do the same to you again!
It's only screaming from Bulma and Vegeta that makes the young man come back to his senses.
I'm sorry. I took you two for someone else.
Frost tried to not show that he was a bit shaken up. No problem. It's a weird way to say hello, though. Oh, Frost? This is Future Trunks. He's the guy who whomped Freezer. A chill went down Frost's spine.
I thought you were Frieza. And someone's been messing around with the timelines, and so that someone I talked about looks just like Goku.
Frost felt that he might have walked into bigger trouble than he asked for. Maybe fighting him might not have been so bad after all. In the space of a few minutes, things had gotten far more complicated than our main character would have liked. He had not anticipated to be in the middle of a very major situation involving time travel, strong powers, and having to potentially help something that he didn't really comprehend fully, lacking even the basic context that was practically second nature to everyone else present. Clearly, Frost was way in over his blue and white head. Not only Frost was far away from his home universe out of necessity, and for his very existence, but he was now aware that there is some sort of evildoer who is capable of moving around timelines and endangering his very existence. Great. He wasn't sure which universe would be safe these days. It was hard to say if it might be better than bounty hunters and assassins that were possibly waiting for him in Universe 6, by sticking around here, but for now, he was pretty confused about everything. I mean, to be fair, later in the arc, we were probably as an audience just as befuddled, with the timeline stuff. But brace yourself, Frosty Pops, it's about to get even more meta for you. Apparently, this so-called time traveler that the others weren't really batting an eyelid about whatsoever was a friend. And in fact, a future version of Vegeta's son, who already existed here. And not only that, but this wasn't the first time he had been here, having appeared in the lives of Goku and the others. Forgive me for asking, Goku, but shouldn't that future man meeting our Trunks cause some sort of wibbly-wobbly, timey-wimey trouble or something? It's what I've heard about in movies back in my universe and the like. In fact, I believe that I was in a movie about this very same topic. I've been in a lot of movies. Goku shrugged and said he had no idea how it exactly worked, but it seemed to be no problem for now, so, no worries. Frost gulped. How did these people survive for so long, going off on only intuition and hope? Trunks, being a being of massive hope, unaware of all of this doubt, continued his prophecies, and also warned them about a pretty destructive being just like his Universe 7 coach, in the fact that he looked practically identical. Frost was curious, not shocked, but intrigued. He thought about this at great length to himself. I don't know whether it makes sense, but would it really be outside of the realms of possibility that at some point down the line, through some great cataclysm or flashpoint, that Master Goku just simply switched sides? He then realized he was muttering louder than he had thought, and everybody had heard it and was looking at him. Frost, looking pale because that was basically what he was doing, and realized that everybody, without even saying a word, doubted his theory. He retreated inwards and looked rather bashful. Well, we cannot rule out anything at this point. We barely know anything about this new menace is all. Frost looked troubled. Trunks, though, shook his head, and didn't really pay much mind to it. I don't think it's that simple. Maybe where you come from, that's something you would do, but I feel that there's some greater force controlling the body of my old friend. But I don't know what exactly. Trunks had dismissed this theory, but Bulma hadn't. She shook her head and looked coolly at Frost. Oh, the irony of that statement. I don't like the fact that you even dare to assume that Goku could even possibly turn against us. Why would he do that? Frost looked even more vulnerable at this, but Goku decided to interject in defense of his friend. Bulma, go easy on him. Frost is right. We can't rule anything out just yet. We barely know anything, and I would very much like to find out more before we rule anything out. He did this to ensure that the situation wouldn't get out of control and Bulma wouldn't dig at Frost some more. Vegeta was surprised at the rather erudite assessment and agreed with his typical monosyllabic grunts. Frost breathed a sigh of relief. He didn't like the thought of time travel being used against people in this sort of way, something which Beerus and he actually saw eye to eye on. I concur. Time travel is not something to be messed with. I'm both surprised and angered that mortal beings are even capable of it. Bulma was now being defensive about this and told the cat not to look at her. She hadn't been the Bulma to invent it. Can't be helped. You're the closest example of the Bulma who invented this machine, so you are just as culpable. I'll be having words with you once this entire mess is cleared up, and this future boy is out of our hair. It was clear as day that Beerus did not seem to be entirely happy that mortals were time traveling with the greatest of ease, something that Whis should be doing. Frost then wondered what Champa's reaction would be. Probably even more explosive than Beerus's. Or perhaps he might actually find use for us, being curious. I mean, either way, it wouldn't be a reaction that he would have wanted to see, whether it was good or bad. It would have meant, most likely, having to do more work for him and being around the unpredictable and irritating cat. In the meantime, Frost decided to converse with Kaba and ask for his 2 zennies. So, do you truly believe in that whole time travel thing? It doesn't seem logical at all to me. How can our future already have been written? His Saiyan friend smiled a little bit, being just as clueless seemingly. What we've done getting here is just as fantastical when you think about it. Frost blinked. What do you mean? Well, we just casually crossed the boundary between 2 universes, as if it were nothing? When you say it out loud, does it even sound remotely credible? Our alien hero sighed deeply and nodded. Universal travel in the blink of an eye was pretty out of this world too, in its own right. Time travel seemed relatively plausible. No, not really. I just hoped that all of this was just a bad dream I was having. I guess not. This situation feels rather serious, something that is way above our skill set. If this villain is half as powerful as Master Goku, then we might be in a world of trouble. Kaba could sense despondency in the voice of his friend, so he resumed his trademark chipper attitude. Hey, come on! Remember why we're here in the first place. We are part of a peacekeeper force. No matter what universe we're in, buddy, if we can help, we help. It's part of who we are. Oh, his friend's naive chivalry was charming at times, and right now, it did help his mood a little bit. It certainly didn't make him feel worse. Yeah, you're probably right. When they finished their conversation, Frost was asked by Goku to assist him with some sparring, and Trunks was going to be a part of this particular session. Already, just by looking at him, this future Trunks person seemed pretty tough and worn down. Clearly, he'd been through a lot. When training actually began, before Goku would get to him, he wanted to see what his own pupil right now could do against Trunks, and so Frost went in first. feeling very nervous and not wanting to meet a similar fate to Frieza in front of Trunks. He moved with caution. When being told about Frost's situation, Trunks seemed pretty confused about the entire multi-universal thing and the fact that was a nice Frieza. But having seen notable differences between the main timeline Android 18 and the one from his own timeline, well, he's not one to judge, and soon he becomes more open to the idea that someone who looks a lot like Frieza could be a good person after all. Trunks remained, though, a little cagey for the moment, but the sentiments were slowly improving between them. I'm glad the fact that you're a decent member of your race that doesn't need to be stopped. Trust me, the feeling's mutual. But back to the sparring session. When it came to the brass tacks, the fight was pretty equal. This guy was powerful, yeah, but he was miles behind Goku or Vegeta, and unlike them, Trunks wasn't holding back, he was going all out. In that moment, our Frosty boy was feeling good. For the first time since he got to Earth here, he felt like he was not on the back foot for once. Frost could actually gain the upper hand. Mind you, it wasn't easy. Frost kept himself in check, reminding himself constantly that he was not allowed to lose his cool or his guard, or else he would let go of his advantage at any moment. But, sadly for him, the battle gets interrupted by a new challenger, as it were, by Goku, wearing grey and black clothing, and yet Goku was still on the sidelines looking just as bamboozled as the rest of them. It turns out that this stranger was telling the truth. But wait, was that a good thing, really? However, seemingly, this being had a thing for overly long monologues. Not entirely unlike Frost, in fact, but there was something really annoying in that fact. He then witnessed how eager his teacher, having sat out the session, observing, was keen to test himself out against this opponent who looked like him. But during the duel, it gets painfully obvious that while this new mysterious enemy is pretty powerful in his base form, he hadn't figured out stuff like, Super Saiyan, and therefore had no response to Master Goku's Super Saiyan 2 form. Frost even allowed himself to scoff at the poor show of this interloper. Seriously? No transformations? What an amateur! Kaba, however, remained stoic and in focus. It didn't matter how strong this person was. They could still do serious damage to the planet if it was riled up in any way. But that gets thankfully averted when the time-space continuum suddenly looks back in the direction of Goku Black and says, "Hey, what are you doing?" And he gets sent back to the future. Not before destroying the time machine, of course. Frost seems unimpressed at best. It was clearly the first time he had felt let down by examples of power here. This evil Goku certainly is not the Saiyan that is teaching him right now. It's too much bluster. Nor was his style particularly honourable. He was just acting like a common thug. Goku was curious, though, to hear what he thought of the situation, and Frost decided to eloquently voice his thoughts and reckoned that something wasn't quite right with this fellow. This wasn't a Goku. He doesn't seem like you in any way aside from the body. It's almost like it's another being wearing your outfit. Whis nodded. Frost does have a point. The aura that I got from that being was rather different to that of Goku's. In fact, it felt almost unmortal-like. Interesting. Frost then checked himself and realized that his rhetoric was very unusual. Oh dear, I've been spending too much time with Kaba. I'm starting to talk like him. His thoughts then get interrupted, however, by Trunks, lamenting over the loss of his time machine, and Whis then stating that this mysterious individual had also been using a time ring, him being a time traveler as well, and those time rings were normally worn by Supreme Kais. Whis was clearly getting more and more invested into this endeavour with the more clues becoming available, and it was becoming clear to him after the fact. The Dragon team then tell Trunks to not give up that easily, and that he could count on their support for the upcoming investigation. They are an encouraging little bunch after all, and Frost had decided to give them that. This turned out to be far more doable than he had first thought. Foreshadowing. Bulma decides to try and fix the time machine based on the blue book that she was able to recover from the wreckage, whilst Trunks decides to tell everyone of what he had endured after leaving them the first time around after Perfect Cell was defeated. Now over a decade ago, Kaba held on his every word and was captivated by the story. Wow, it must be really tough in a future without a proper peacekeeping force. All on your own like that? Mutters Kaba. But wait, didn't you have the Galactic Patrol? Couldn't they have helped? Trunks shook his head. Jago, He and the rest of them got torn apart in days by Black. I heard his last transmission. My mother and I heard it. It was horrible. We were helpless to stop them. But surely this galactic patrol could help. One at full power, right? Everyone looked at Kaba, puzzled. Vegeta sighed deeply. That is true, but this is a pretty big fish for them to fry. I doubt that they could help in any meaningful way. Well, Trunks, me and my buddy Frost will do anything to help you save your future. Right, we will, Mr. Trunks. Frost nodded, kind of split on the fact that his friend was pulling him into this without his full support, but he had no choice now, so he decided to go with it. Thank you. I know that neither of you have any inherent interest in saving my future, so I'm even more grateful. During the time it took to repair the time machine, Trunks chose to spend some quality time with Gohan and the others, making the most of the fact that where he was right now, stranded, was quite a fair ways better nick than his home. Did they have ice cream in the future? I think not. He then chooses to train with Vegeta, and even then spends some time with Kaba, who tells them about Universe 6 Saiyans and how much more of a different route they had taken in history to the ones in Universe 7. Trunks was blown away by this fact, different universes, that the lawful good alignment in these Saiyans actually happened. He felt like he would have been a good Universe 6 Saiyan in another life. Kaba chose this moment to get Frost in Trunks' good books. Frost is totally amazing. He'd been a hero before he joined the Force. He's been the greatest help in keeping Universe 6 safe. When hearing this, that Kaba had bigged him up, Frost looked troubled. Taking praise from an audience is one thing, but somehow his past misdeeds were now coming to the fore again, ruining the feel-good factor. Hey, I know that look. You feel that you're not good enough. I had that in the past. All the time. When I failed to save my mentor, but I bounced back from that in the end. I returned stronger and defeated powerful foes. I'm sure whatever you do in your universe, it's worth the praise. Frost felt like his stomach was made of iron, heavy and low. Thank you, Mr. Trunks. And likewise, I think that you will succeed in beating that Goku Black fellow. Trunks nodded. Thank you, you two. That makes me feel a little better. But Frost wasn't feeling any better. That night, he couldn't sleep a wink. He dreamt about his past life, his other life, back in Universe 6, pontificating whatever Sherbet had probably had in store for him. About his Saiyan friends finding out the truth about his real past. Would he be cast out, tried, or even snuffed out? The thought actually got him even more scared than having to deal with bounty hunters and assassins that may have been on his case, without him even knowing. It was weird. He had spent so much time worrying over his own safety, but now the thing that really terrified him was the fact that Kaba and the others would learn the truth about him. Frost couldn't find an answer to this in either his waking or sleeping planes of consciousness, but he had to focus on the task at hand. Trunks needed their help, and that could get his mind off whatever awaited him back home. When Frost awoke the next day, he realized that he had plenty to think about. The feelings of his home universe were clouding his thoughts, making him doubt his own value and strength. He couldn't let that get the better of him, he just could not, as that would make him no help to the prospect of Goku Black causing trouble in the here and now. When he did get up, he walked over to a nearby mirror and stared himself down. He couldn't let Sherbet and his goons get into his head from afar. Not right now. He had friends here and a job to do. Something he could quite rightly contribute well toward now. He could do this. That being said, things were moving at quite the fast click. Frost and the others did not have a large amount of time to wait and process the future events, as Whis moves into action in his own way. He decides that they should travel to Universe 10. When asked about this by Goku, the Angel has a very good idea of this mission, due to Whis having a certain idea about who Black might be, or who he might become. Frost and Kaba elect to go with Goku, Whis and Beerus, stating that with their knowledge of other universes, it might prove to be useful, or at least a little bit insightful. Beerus, though, was not thrilled about having more hangers-on going with them. He wanted to keep this expedition a rather discreet one, as well as short. He had important naps to catch up with. But Whis was the one who was calling the shots, and he too had no issue with them coming along. "So long as you don't stick your neck out too much, feel free," said Whis quite calmly. And as you could probably imagine, Zamasu was also not really happy about the group being there, More mortals? Echoing Beerus's own grimace, who was trying his very hardest to look important and dignified, but looked as sour as the sourest of pusses. Gowasu, though, is able to stop his student from doing anything reckless and keep him from the main conversation for the most part, relegating his pupil to make his trademark's cup of tea. Because I could imagine that Zamasu, he makes a mean cuppa. Whis then goes on to explain to Gowasu about the whole Goku Black situation back in Universe 7, and how the evildoer has managed to get the time ring to go on and cause chaos after that. Gowasu, though, is quite surprised why they came here of all places. Whis then states that they felt a strange ki coming from Goku Black that didn't reflect Goku's, and that was odd, that it might have originated from here, along with the time rings, because this is where they're kept. As the bigwigs are talking about these anomalies, Frost then notes, to his surprise, that Zamasu has no idea even what a time ring is. The Kai in training keeping an ear out though, as he is trying to pretend to busy himself away clearing the empty cups. Isn't he supposed to be a Kai or something? Kaba looks to Zamasu. Yeah, I guess. He does look quite confused. He's meant to be a real prodigy, or at least that's what I've heard. He should know things like this. Frost and Zamasu's eyes then meet, and the Frost Demon looks away frantically. You know, that kind of moment. It's a bit awkward. He's pretending to resume his gaze on Whis, but Zamasu's expression betrays the actual fact that, yeah, those two probably heard the exchange, and then were mocking him. While the gods are going to check on the time rings, Beerus and Whis tell the others just to be at ease, but just make sure that you don't break anything. Goku is allowed to fight Zamasu, Gowasu seeing no real problem in this, much to the Kai's dismay. But Gowasu is also curious to see how his pupil would stack up against Beerus's candidate. It's a nice little oddity, that. But Goku then explains that he isn't a candidate exactly, he's a friend of Beerus. Beerus? Making friends? That's quite the surprise. The old Kai chuckles to himself. Master Goku really likes to fight, says the Frostling. Kaba nods. Challenging gods? This guy is something else. You can't hold a candle to them. Vegeta glares at them both, despising their adulation toward the clown, and he decides to accompany Gowasu, Beerus and Whis, just to get away from all this sucking up going on. The fight continues. It goes on much like in the original, and Frost ponders if he had seen that fighting style performed by that doppelganger Goku before. He starts to squint, looking fervently at the battle. From what he could tell, based on his direct training with Goku, and there was a lot of training, something was definitely up. This wasn't a wholly new fighter he saw in Zamasu. Maybe there was something there, something to Whis' musing, but it's too early to point the finger at this one yet. And besides, who would believe Frost right now? They needed more substantial proof right now, as well as further confirmation from others, and most importantly, the good word from Goku stating that he too felt a similar aura from Zamasu. After making sure that the time rings, which were locked away far into the reaches of the abode, were safe, and not a single one was missing, the group, including Vegeta, returns to Universe 7, satisfied with their investigations. Goku and Frost get talking about the battle, the Saiyan pretty interested in Zamasu's potential. Wow, I've never fought a Kai that strong before. They're really improving. Usually they think that Frieza was the strongest anyone could get. That guy though, way better. Frost shuffles, feeling a little awkward. Am I stronger than Frieza? In that form of yours? Sure, but you got more in you. I can feel it. Frost allowed himself a little smile, but there was little time to wallow in this good feeling. When they all get back, Bulma has actually made all the necessary modifications to the time machine to allow some extra things to go on, including adding extra seating attached to the outer part of the vessel, in order to fit more people in and assuring that nobody is crammed inside the main console. Kaba and Frost help with the finishing touches, as they both have some basic mechanical skills based on their past wheelings and dealings and experiences, while Goku has his meeting with Zeno. After that is done, Vegeta, Kaba, Frost and Trunks are training together. Frost is using his training with Goku to gauge where he is in the pecking order amongst the others. Thankfully, he is on pace with them, and Vegeta has no excuses to call him a weakling anymore. But that doesn't mean that he would be as welcoming or more welcoming or as forgiving regardless. He still didn't trust him. All 5 of them are able to travel into the future together in one go. The pods are still not exactly comfortable, and look more like something you would put cargo in. It's still better though than what the original people got. As they arrive in future Trunks' timeline, they quickly discover that it really is no fun. Frost and Kaba are shocked by how bleak it looks. In all their respective adventures, neither of them had wandered to a world that was this far gone, so destroyed and desolate. Frost couldn't even begin to fathom how terrible Goku Black must have been if he allowed his own evilness to reign over a place so battered. Why would he want to rule over this? Before the Earth's resistance attacks the group, Trunks is able to convince them to hold their fire, that these men have no ill will. Frost shakes his head. He feels bad for these people, but the state of this defense force looks really pathetic. They won't be able to survive for long, in his mind. Those people need help. For once, Frost feels like he can easily show his swagger amongst these humans. However, before he can revel in this rare example of self-importance, Haru and Maki, those 2 children, approach the newcomers, being confused about Frost in particular.
Hey, mister?
Maki starts to say before checking herself.
Who are you? Are you here to help us?
Frost pondered for a while, but then realised something. Oh, this is just like back home. The good times. Here, for the first time in forever, he could put on his hero face and act the saviour. Of course, little one. I am Frost of Universe 6, a famed hero and defender of the hurt and oppressed. Me and my partner Kaba here are here to help you against this evil man threatening your world. Oh, and those ones over here are aiding us too. He waved a hand in the vague direction of Goku and Vegeta, like they were an inconvenience. The kids seemed genuinely cheered up by this news, and internally, Frost hoped that he could actually fulfill that promise, not just for his own ego's sake. This time around, unlike his past self, he really did want to see these folks' lot improve. Now, of course, scared orphans weren't an uncommon sight in his line of work, but this time, this sight somehow hit harder. He truly felt their pain. Future Mai has survived, much to Trunks' relief, and Vegeta shares the banquet with the civilians that Bulma had supplied, allowing them to have some good food for a change. It had been many years since they could have had something so extravagant. Them having to live off meagre rations from the confines of past warehouses and limited food generation. Goku Black, obviously, making it hard to go on supply runs, or even to allow the basics of life to go about unabated. Meanwhile, the Saiyans and Frost have work to do. They need to hunt down the aforementioned Goku Black. All that so he may not bring these fools' lives into an even worse state. Sure enough, quite easily in fact, they find Goku Black monologuing above the destroyed city, and threaten him with a barrage of ki attacks, just to make the point that there is nowhere he can hide. That he got lucky earlier when the time strands pulled him back into the future. Naturally, given how this future clown looks like the present clown, Vegeta insists on fighting Black first. But our hero quickly discovers that Black is much stronger now than he was the last time they had met, and then Black presents Super Saiyan Rose to our heroes. Frost, looking at Goku, starts to feel a small sense of resentment toward him. If only they'd taken that fight more seriously, Black would have been gone, they wouldn't have had to come to the future. Black, here, now, wouldn't have improved so fast. How many transformations can this Saiyan come up with? Frost said with vitriol to nobody in particular, himself seeming surprised by this. He is even more shocked to see that Black's transformation isn't all about a sense of grandeur, it actually had some power going into it too. With seemingly little effort, he is able to take control of the battle and handily manages to stab Vegeta through the chest with a purple keyblade. Kaba is especially enraged by this new power and wants to avenge his master, but is ordered by Goku to back off and instead go to Vegeta and tend to his wounds. Kaba is incensed by this, wanting to defend his master more directly, but he ultimately complies because he's a nice boy, sensing that Goku is also being very serious at this point. Goku himself tried to put up a fight to his negative doppelganger, but he too gets knocked to the ground by Black. Despite this though, when he starts to charge the Black Kamehameha, Frost decides that now is the time to act. Do what he can to save his master. He tries to disturb his concentration with his own barrage of attacks. The fight then gets interrupted by the arrival of future Zamasu. Goku and future Zamasu then go on to fight each other on a pretty even ground, now that he has had some time to gather his bearings and get his stamina back somewhat. But then Black decides to chime in once more, he too having regained his composure from Frost's trickery. Frost then decides to even the odds even further. With Trunks tending to Vegeta's wounds, now Kaba decides to help his buddy. Black, however, is too much for the two Universe 6 friends. Making sure that Vegeta is safe and now in a stable condition, Trunks charges at Zamasu with his sword, only to discover that the Kai is immortal, his sword leaving no lasting effects on him. The fight doesn't go well for our heroes after that point, but they are surprisingly saved by a diversion from the soldiers, led by future Mai. Frost's eyes widen. His respect for that group had grown vastly. Despite their weakness in comparison to godlike beings, their experience shows no signs of being just as small. They clearly know how to handle Black, despite the disadvantage. Our heroes then have little choice but to evacuate, due to Black being in hot pursuit, giddy with excitement, and not only having this new power, but also undermining the efforts of the past, them looking so confident when they had arrived. Oh, how that had turned on its head so spectacularly. They know that they have one place short in the time machine, however. Our heroes have to make a difficult choice. Someone has to stay. While Mai tries to be brave, stating she would be of more use in the future to aid the resistance more, Frost remembers the scared kids from earlier and the bleakness of this place, as he knocks them out cold. Trunks looks horrified, snarling at Frost.
Frost, what are you doing?
Screams Trunks. Frost turns back to them, a look of assuredness on his face, mixed with a tinge of fear. I may be not as strong as you lot, but I'm rather durable. It's clear, isn't it? One of us needs to stay and draw their attention away from the civilians. The group's expression softens, and they process Frost's words, Vegeta looking rather intrigued. Just promise me this. Come back as soon as you can. I don't want to be stuck here forever, he smiles jokingly, as if he's trying to alleviate the somber tone of the situation. Frost, Kaba seeming shocked. It's okay, buddy. It's why we joined the force, right? With little time to bicker, the heroes have to go with Frost's wishes, and seconds later, the time machine disappears, leaving Frost behind. When they had gone, Frost's expression immediately changes. What had he done? What was the point of that ridiculous bravado? All he had done was ensure his own death. If not back in Universe 6 at the hands of Hit or Sherbert or something, then here, in this godforsaken cesspit, where nobody knew him. There's no choice. He's got to run away from here. He must flee. This could be even worse than whatever is waiting for him in Universe 6. Way worse. Stupid Kaba. It was all his fault for making Frost soft. And sure enough, Frost's fears rang true. Before he could fly as fast as he could, a familiar voice loomed overhead.
Oh look, they left one behind.
Black smiling menacingly. Frost's resolve steeled up once more. Black, though, could sense his fear from within. But Frost put on a brave face. You know, you like to talk big. If you think you can take me, you'll have to catch me. And so, with great gusto, Black started his pursuit of Frost, destroying a large portion of the city at the same time. This wasn't frustrating for Black. This was fun. Frost, though, doesn't get all that far. He seems to be cornered. So, he decides to change tack and attack Black head on, who in his hubris decides not to power up to Rose like he had done against the others. He seems to dominate our hero, his theory proving accurate. But luckily for Frost, the former space pirate still has some wits about him. When Goku Black grabs him by the neck, he uses his old trick on him, firing his poison needles at him. At first, Black doesn't notice the small stabbing sensation, thinking that this was just his body still reeling from the burst of power earlier. But seconds later, Black starts to weaken. Black's grip lessens, and Frost was now the one in control.
You puny little... What have you done to...
I outsmarted you. And so, Frost shoots Black with his Chaos Beam right through the chest. But he doesn't kill him though. He didn't have time to finish the job, as it were, as Zamasu was right there to come to his friend's aid. As the Kai needs to heal his ally, and fast, Frost manages to escape. He angered them, and they will be looking for him. Maybe for days. But Frost is pretty good when it comes to escaping. He hopes that the rest will be back before the two evildoers will get him though. Once the time machine,
The link to safety of the past was gone. Frost was all alone. For him, ironically, time stood still. All that mattered right now was one thing: run. It was the same for many days. In fact, Frost couldn't remember exactly how long he had managed to hide from Zamasu and Goku Black. Could have been days, could have been weeks. He had no real idea. The only good thing to come out of it was his own sense of confidence. The natural resilience of his species had been put to the test, and he had come out on top. It reminded him actually of one particular mission, similar actually, where there was a stakeout, and he had managed to last a couple of weeks without food, starving out his enemies, and then going in for the win. He didn't enjoy it though, because, he liked food. And this exercise had the added risk of being, well, killed. Another thing in his favour that he had garnered from being here was that he knew that he could hold the enemy's attention only for so long. In the end, they would get bored and go back to their cave or whatever they called home. Granted, that would have been good for him, so he wouldn't be chased anymore, but it wouldn't be so good for any remaining humans. What was even more irritating than this stalemate of the situation right now was the fact that Goku Black had a few tricks up his sleeve to spook Frost out of hiding, and he resorted to them now. They had sussed him out and found there was an element of fear within Frost, and Black was able to create several shadowy clones that could pursue him now from different angles. One small mistake, and he would be theirs for the picking. Sure, Frost was powerful enough to destroy these, they were nowhere near as strong as the real deal, but that only increased the advantage his enemies had over him, especially with how strong they were. With just sending clone after clone, they could whittle down his stamina. Not even he could keep up the constant disappearing act. Frost began to feel the bite. Finally, after many weeks, his strength had started to wear thin, and as such, is set upon by Zamasu and Black, who catch up with him. Frost's tail had whipped around the corner, and they spotted it. He had hoped he had done enough to live for another day, but it wasn't to be. Instead, he ran straight into a green, grey-suited Kai, who looked down at him with a look of both satisfaction and pity. My, what an annoying little thing you are, and yet rather curious, uttered Zamasu, as Black grabs Frost by his arm. Frost looks behind at Black, who has an evil grin. This capture was very satisfying to him.
You have no idea how long I've waited for this moment. You almost topped Trunks in terms of entertainment for us.
Our hero doesn't have much power left in him to so much as wriggle out of this grip. He could barely resist the grab being tightened further, and then something else puts pay to his attempt of flight. He could feel something that resembled a keyblade being slowly but surely shoved into his back. It was searing pain. He had once felt something similar before in a mission, but that paled in comparison to this. Not only was the actor being pierced unbearable, the key itself felt like it was enjoying the thought of searing flesh, inflicting agony upon its target. Zamasu then became circumspect, longing to ask one of these newcomers this, and now he had one of them at his mercy, the opportunity arose. I have been wondering, why did you come here? This isn't your timeline. This isn't even your universe. Why are you so unbearably persistent and desperate to save this realm? Frost only turns around to spit some blood in Zamasu's face. He grimaced and slapped Frost, but in a short moment, a smile which reeked of slight understanding slowly crawls upon his face. Zamasu looked immensely thrilled. Atonement. That's what this is about, isn't it? You're here to atone for past acts. You must have done something really bad to have dipped your toes into this fight, yes? The silence spoke volumes. I thought as much, as it should be expected from a mortal lowlife such as yourself. Black, let's dismember this annoyance. Slowly. He has been messing with our affairs for way too long. So let's make his torture way too long. Black laughed and slipped out the keyblade from Frost's back and moved it elsewhere. And as Black was preparing his keyblade to slice Frost's arm clean off, something happened which put pay to that. A gunshot broke the silence. In a split second, an energy bullet pierced Black's arm. It wasn't enough to do serious harm, but the sheer shock tactic and off-guard moment, like we see with Goku at the beginning of the Universe Survival arc, made it so Black let out a scream of slight pain. But it gave Frost enough time to slip out of his grip, finding cover. What followed was then a storm of ki blasts, which started to drown Zamasu and Black in pure light. Frost lunged out of his cover to get a look at who had helped him. He then sensed their energy. "Took you long enough," Frost smirked at Goku, Vegeta, Kaba, Trunks and Mai, who had indeed returned for him. Revitalized and more battle-ready than ever. Kaba flew over toward his friend and offered him an arm. "Frost, are you alright? Some no good pseudo-deities are not enough to hold me back. I gave them the runaround all this time." Vegeta looked disappointed.
Huh, you chose to hide rather than fight. That's not what I trained you to do, Frost.
Frost had noticed that he was getting a pretty stern look from Vegeta, but after a while, the Saiyan Prince nodded and backed down.
But still, not bad. You managed to survive. We'll take it from here.
Did he just get a compliment? From Vegeta of all people? Oh, that must have been some good rest he had gotten. Frost could do with some of that right now, he thought. Another thought that flew through his mind right now was that he was slowly weakening. His body had given all that it could have done, and now he needed rest. Badly. But as he did so, he observed through sensing it the gains his friends had gotten in this time. They hadn't been dawdling. Even he could see how Black and Zamasu were starting to get dominated. This boded well for the future. Maybe this won't take too long after all, and they can all go home. Trunks and Mai now safe from this temporal menace. Kaba then approached him and gave him a weird bean. Frost was confused as to why he was given just one solitary bean instead of perhaps, I don't know, a tin of them? Apparently, this singular legume was supposed to revitalize him. He was pretty skeptical about this though, but he quickly realized that this thing was truly special. In just seconds, he was back to full strength, his scuffs and cuts all healed. Even the wound on his back was gone. He didn't even feel tired anymore. It was like he'd gotten off of the time machine with the rest of the crew. The last few weeks never had happened, and wow! And on top of all that, the Supreme Kais of Universes 7 and 10 had appeared to witness their struggle. And for a good while, it seemed as if all of this could be over in a matter of minutes. But little did they know that Zamasu and Black had their final ace up their sleeve. They also used those weird earrings to fuse into a singular being. Said being was powerful, not just powerful in conventional terms. This was now like fighting a true god. The halo behind them was blinding, and the aura they were emanating was that of utter brilliance. It was terrifying just to look at them. This leap in power was also enough to dominate all three fighters, and even Kaba and Frost, when they entered the fray, could not change anything in terms of the outcome, bringing the fight back into their favour. But to even the odds a little bit, Goasu offers his set of earrings to Goku and Vegeta, and thusly, Vegito Blue is born. Despite not wearing the same clothes as Vegeta was wearing just now, I'm like, Busaka, how does that even work? Frost marvels at the power of the fused warrior, though he is made aware that this would only last for 1 hour. Well, hopefully 1 hour would be enough, right? This act of fusion got another Saiyan's mind buzzing. Just imagine it, Frost! What we could do if we fused! Wouldn't that be cool? Kaba exclaimed. Frost rolled his eyes. Yeah, as if that was about to happen. What kind of creature would be born from that combination? Something he didn't wish to speculate about any further at the moment. The pressure that Vegeta put on fused Zamasu starts to show his imperfections, as the monstrosity slowly becomes less stable, starting to corrupt thanks to Black's mortality, ironically. Sadly though, when they're about to finish him off, Vegito defuses, as they've used all the power up, in just 7 minutes instead of an hour. This now leaves Zamasu victorious in that struggle, so Kaba and Frost decide to approach Trunks, saying that his sword had been broken due to the previous confrontations with the nefarious duo. Are you alright? Our protagonist eyes the time traveller. Trunks was starting to lose hope about the whole situation. Even that fusion thing didn't work the way it was supposed to. I don't know how much longer I can go on. If Father and Goku could not take him down, I'm unsure what can. He's weakening. Can't you see it? This isn't his world. And besides, this is your future, not his. We believe in you and are right behind you, Trunks, Frost exclaimed. The son of Vegeta doubted himself a little bit, but seeing all the faith that his friends from Universe 6 had for him, as well as the effort that his father and Goku had put into the battle, defending his future, even though they actually didn't have to, technically, Trunks knew he had to deliver. It seemed rather bleak initially, but in the end, future Trunks is the one to ultimately save the day with a spirit sword. Having his father and friends believe in him, he delivers the blow that slices fused Zamasu in half. The sight of seeing this rather irritating enemy being eviscerated in such a manner gave off something which was pure catharsis. But it's just not over. Zamasu's influence starts to destroy the timeline and consume everything. As if a god had been bad enough, this thing had now become reality itself and was starting to break it down piece by piece. How is that even possible? What are we going to do now? How can we fight this thing? Frost is absolutely shocked by their inability to eliminate this threat. But Goku had one more trick. He pressed the Zeno button. But should he have did that? The Omni King now appears in order to destroy the remnant of the evildoer. But this isn't the same Zeno that Goku had befriended back at the Universe 6 contest. This Zeno had no connection to him whatsoever. So he went on to destroy Zamasu along with the timeline. So that was it. They won. But at what cost? Frost remembered Haru and Maki. Them, along with every other mortal from this world, were gone. But he dared not oppose the Omni King. He had heard the gods discussing putting Trunks and Mai then into a twin future, a place where there were two of them, and they would have to just deal with it. Some kind of plan. This was just unfair. It was outrageous. How, after everything those two had been through, what they got for all their hard work was them being put simply into a copy of their own existence? There had to be another way. I have another idea, Frost interrupted Whis. Oh? Do tell us. I'm open to ideas. We could perhaps gather the Super Dragon Balls and maybe ask Super Shenron to restore their timeline. It can't be worse than what Zamasu had done with them. Beerus snarled at Frost. And who's going to translate your wish for you, Frieza wannabe? Our hero looked as stern as ever. Lord Beerus, with all due respect, Mr. Trunks has shown resilience and has stopped Zamasu from doing even bigger damage to the multiverse. Besides, it was the Kai who broke the rules, not him. Beerus seemed unconvinced. Still, it wouldn't have happened if he hadn't decided to play with the timelines like that. Actually, it would, Lord Beerus. I see Frost's point. If we could hope for some treats from Universe 6, perhaps, I could be of some assistance. Trunks and Mai looked at Frost, shocked. You would do that for us? Frost shrugged. That's what we do. Help each other out. And so, the search for the Super Dragon Ball started. Frost wanted to start in Universe 7 as they were already there. He also knew that his return to Universe 6 could be the point of no return for him, due to him having, obviously, the past to deal with. He might not be allowed to return, his freedom being curtailed, and him being chased to the ends of the galaxy by his old foes. He wasn't ready, but he realized that Trunks, Mai, and everyone destroyed by Zamasu were more important right now than him dealing with his past mess. And besides, after that wild chase that Black and Zamasu had just given him, he got really tired of running.
It was finally the time for them to return to Universe 6 for Frost and Kaba. After all, they had to find the Super Dragon Balls in order to help restore the timeline of Trunks and Mai. And since some of them were present there too, they had to go back despite Frost's reservations. But there was a problem though, and it would make itself known soon enough. Sherbet and his goons, as well as Hit, they were preparing something, and Hit was sure that he would come back to make it work. But Frost decided to put on a brave face anyway. Kaba noticed that before he finished packing his stuff. What's wrong, pal? Are you gonna miss this place? Frost turned away, not wanting to look Kaba in the eye. It's nothing. That's it. You're gonna miss this place, right? I must admit, our adventures in Universe 7, and this whole time-traveling thing, that was something else. Frost tried to not look surprised. Yeah, that's it. I liked it here. Kaba nodded enthusiastically. Don't worry, I'm sure we'll be able to visit again someday. Knowing Vegeta and Goku, they'll need our help again there. Yeah, probably. Frost was pretty absent-minded right now, but it wasn't about him. He needed to get it together. Trunks, Mai, and everyone that was killed by Black and Zamasu were more important than him. This was his last act of goodwill, he thought, before his old life would come back to consume him whole, dragging him back into the darkness. So when Goku, Vegeta and Whis arrived to go to Universe 6, Frost tried to act up his eagerness toward the mission. The team had gathered round and the Angel then transported them all back to Sadala, their base of operations. Whis debriefed the team. I will bring you back to Universe 7 once you have located the Dragon Balls here. Goku, take this button. He handed him a little button. Press that only when you have found them. Please do not use it for anything else, mind, as Lord Beerus requires my assistance right now, and my full attention. And remember, do bring us some sweet treats. Bye! Whis smiled and disappeared as quickly as he transported them in. Frost felt uneasy. At least the Angel's presence had given him some semblance of safety, but he decided not to focus on that anymore. He could easily say that being here was something special to Vegeta. He seemed nostalgic for the first time since he had met that crusty Saiyan. There was a weird mixture of sadness and happiness across his face from the first time he set foot on this world. It was like repeating the experience all over again, but seeing it from another point of view. Frost realized that seeing his true home world, Vegeta, and a more peaceful version of it to boot, must have awoken something. Marvelous, isn't it? I wonder if your version was similar. Frost smiled at Vegeta. The prince nodded and closed his eyes, smirking slightly.
It was fine.
It means he likes it, Trunks chuckled.
Whoa, so this is Sadala, huh?
Goku also seemed interested, but not in a very in-depth spiritual way, you know. He was just being his usual jovial self. They decided to visit Sadala's Defense Force headquarters, though for the first time in their lives, they saw Vegeta stalling, catching some glimpses of the villages and landscapes before going there. But as soon as they got closer, Frost caught sight of his former colleagues from the SDF. Something was different though. They weren't happy to see them.
Hey everyone, we're back! These are Masters Vegeta and Goku. They're the last two Saiyans from Universe 7. And they are something else, oh boy. And these are Trunks and Mai.
Renzo sighed before Kaba could continue.
I'm sorry, Kaba, but introductions will have to wait.
As he nodded to two SDF members, they put handcuffs on Frost, much to everyone's shock.
What are you doing?
The young Saiyan seemed deeply shaken by what had happened.
I'm sorry, Kaba, but it seems you put your trust in the wrong place.
Renzo looked at the student with a pained expression.
We've got some interesting intel on your friend.
This must be some sort of mistake. Frost has been nothing but selfless when he aided us.
Trunks was vouching for him as well, Goku nodding too.
It's true. I can vouch for him.
Renzo was not convinced, despite Goku's stature.
He is good at that sort of thing, tricking people. You see, this one is a known con artist, a former captain of a band of pirates that liked to cause problems that he would then go on to fix, foster undeserved glory.
Frost, tell them. This is a mistake, right?
Kaba tried to comfort his friend, but Frost's look was stern. I am ready to answer for my crimes. Take me away. Kaba's face blanched in a second.
Frost, no.
Frost nodded at Renzo, then turned back to his friend. I'm sorry, Kaba, but focus on helping Trunks and Mai, okay? My part is done. I shall, as the movies say, face the music. And he was allowed to be taken away by the guards, much to everyone's shock and awe. There was no snarky comment from Vegeta either. When their eyes met, Frost felt as if he were saying, good luck, to him. It was weird, but assuring. And as such, Frost was taken to the prisoner processing facility when he was shown all the evidence concerning his guilt, sent by Sherbet, no doubt. All the recordings, all the old plans. He admitted to everything. He could feel that some of the guards were a little bit sympathetic towards his cause, though they were understandably hurt by the betrayal too. But at least he was coming clean and making it easier for them. It would have actually been even harder had he denied it and them having to drag this out longer. It was decided. Being a con artist wasn't the greatest of crimes per se, but the amount of times that Frost had done so, abusing his position and fame, as well as the resulting destruction that his crew had caused in his absence, that warranted a very long time in SDF space prison. He was taken to the transporter, all chained up and gloomy. He had given up on himself. The journey would take some time, as the prison itself wasn't on Sadala, but he was mentally preparing himself to spend the rest of his days behind bars. Suddenly, the transporter stopped. Hey, why did we stop? He spoke to the guards via the intercom, but there was no response. Hello? The door opened, and he saw Hit.
Someone wants to see you.
Before Frost could protest, the assassin knocked him out cold. When he woke up, he was in a round room that looked around some sort of arena. He could see a lot of hateful eyes from the stands. He was still tied up, and in the front, there were two figures. One short, that he recognized very well, Sherbet, and Hit, posing as his bodyguard.
I am surprised that it was so easy. I did not expect you to simply surrender, Captain.
All right, you got me. What now?
You turned your back on us. Not really comfy with that goody two-shoes attitude. We wanted your friends to know who you really were before, we would be done with you.
Frost grunted. I deserve that, I suppose. Sherbet cackled.
Such a defeatist. Perfect. Hit. I would finish him off myself, but this one is rather durable. So knock yourself out.
Hit walked slowly to Frost and cut his ties. Then before Frost could react, he simply said, "Show me what you've got," and punched him in the face. Frost had to power up and dodge some of Hit's attacks. It was clear that the assassin was merely toying with him, just like how a predator would toy with its prey. He decided to power up to 100%, something he managed to achieve after his training with Goku. While his attacks were stronger, they were still not enough to even connect with Hit. So the Merc hit him again, and again, and again. Sherbet was squealing from the excitement.
Is that all? I would expect you to have gotten more gains from your vacation in Universe 7.
It wasn't a vacation.
I know what it was. It was you being a coward, running away from responsibility.
Frost had to use both his arms and all his strength to stop one punch from Hit. I was always cowardly.
Then why do you resist? It'll all be over soon.
That was a good question. Why did he resist? He could end him quickly and painlessly, yet his body was screaming to fight on. Because I want to live.
Typical self-serving egotistical behavior. Tell me,
Frost grunted, trying to block another hit.
how much would I be able to earn from eliminating illegal space travelers?
Frost paled. You wouldn't. They are protected.
There are some beings not happy that mortals figured out time travel. Once I'm done with you, I think I know what my next hit will be.
Frost looked at the assassin, and suddenly felt a surge of power coming through his body that he had never felt before. He remembered Haru. He remembered Maki. The bleakness of the future left by Zamasu. With that sudden burst of spirit, he pushed Hit away, and in a flash of golden radiant light, something had come over him.
Leave them alone!
He roared, as the light blinded the pirates of the stands, and Sherbet, who had fallen down because of the force, was stunned. Hit looked surprised for a moment too, and then a golden, radiant fist connected with his face. A few drops of purple blood landed on the arena. The punch had connected. Frost was all there, golden and majestic, with his arms open. Power was coursing through his body. You may try to take me down, but I won't let you hurt anyone else. Hit smirked and decided to use his time skip ability to the full. While his attack on Frost's vitals did connect, the Golden Warrior caught his hand in a split second, easing the blow greatly, and later headbutted the Merc. They exchanged punches for a while, after which Hit nodded with visible satisfaction. I think that's enough, and he retreated to the stands. Sherbet was flabbergasted.
You! Oh, what are you doing? Finish him! You're clearly stronger. I paid you!
Hit tilted his head.
Correct. But someone paid me even more to protect him. What?
Sherbet and Frost uttered that almost instantly. Hit nodded at his would-be victim.
He's all yours.
Sherbet tried to shoot at Frost, using his side pistol, but Frost just shielded himself and disarmed him with telepathy. Then he flew close to his former subordinate, who tried to hide.
Hey, Captain! We can have a deal! We can rebuild the crew!
I'm sorry, Sherbet. Everyone, I failed you.
What?
Frost shook his head. I was your captain, and I took the easy way out. I failed you. Instead of trying to redeem you, I left you to rot. And for that, I'm truly sorry. The pirates were cowering in the stands. They looked at the golden figure. Now get out of here, all of you. I'm giving you a chance to turn your life around, like I did. The pirates didn't need to hear that twice. They ran away. Sherbet also attempted to crawl away. Oh, and Sherbet?
Yes, Captain?
If you threaten my friends in any way, I will find you. I will end you in ways you cannot comprehend. Understood. Sherbet squeaked and ran away. After it was only himself and Hit left in the auditorium, Frost collapsed to the floor. Breathing heavily, he cackled to himself. The stamina on this thing. How the other guy could benefit. Hit flew down to the pirate. Why did you help me? Frost uttered.
Don't get ahead of yourself. It wasn't an act of mercy. I was paid to help you.
By whom?
That's for me to know.
You didn't have to help me unleash that.
Hit looked away. I saw potential. I've been around a long time, so finding new potential like that is always worth bringing to the surface. It keeps things interesting.
What are you going to do with me now?
Nothing. My work here is done.
I cannot return to Kaba and the others.
Hit turned back to Frost. They are indeed not happy about you, but they're close to locating the last Super Dragon Ball. They'll use your idea and restore the timeline.
Then it's time for me to... He took a deep breath, attempted to stand up. Return to prison.
Even Hit was rather perplexed at that statement. Sounds like you're giving up.
I need to pay for what I have done. Frost looked up at Hit.
There are other ways to pay for your sins, you know.
Like what?
Back, looking more stern than Vegeta had ever done. I will teach you.
You will? Thank you.
Don't thank me. You don't know what you're getting yourself into.
And he offered him a hand to help him get up. Frost was puzzled, but, quite frankly, he owed Hit his life, ironically. Besides, maybe if he got the assassin's training, he could become a vigilante. Yes! Seems like a better use of his talents than rotting in prison. And so, he followed in the footsteps of Hit and started a training regimen that really made the practice he had had with Goku feel like a walk in the park. But sometime in the future, his duties would be required. The Omni King saw an opportunity for having a tournament. Instead of going back to prison like he had originally intended to, he remained under Hit's watchful eye as his protege, training tirelessly. Having been paid to protect the likes of Frost, may as well make him useful, and he had thought Vegeta was being harsh towards Kaba during their training. Unlike Master Goku, Hit was sure to point out his every mistake and made sure that he knew which techniques that he had performed would lead to a potential target's demise. Becoming an assassin, it turned out, was hardly a noble profession, but at least, according to his master, Hit usually went after only bad guys who had wronged other beings. So, yeah, that was small consolation. But still, hearing again all the time instead of having any meaningful progress was a little bit concerning. Though he was sure he had made some progress. Hit, however, was a perfectionist. He demanded a lot from Frost, but even more from himself.
One more sequence and you could take a break. We don't want you to faint on the job.
Very funny. I do not joke, Frost. Hit even remotely hinted that maybe one day, Frost will be able to perform his time skip ability on a basic level. A very basic level, mind. It would take him centuries to master, though. But Frost felt like his physiology could handle it. But could he last 1,000 years, though, like Hit could? Well, time will literally tell. Our former con artist was very committed to prove his new mentor wrong and get the hang of this time skip earlier than that, but it was still eluding him. And during one particular training session, they were visited by a familiar yet unexpected duo. Lord Champa, Lady Vados, to what do we owe the pleasure? Frost uttered, but a glare from Hit quickly silenced him.
It's good to see you two practicing. It'll be needed. The Omni Kings are organizing a tournament between every universe, you see.
Hit raised his eyebrow.
And why would we be interested?
Vados chimed in with her bubbly disposition. Because every universe who runs out of active fighters shall be erased.
What?
Frost almost jumped.
That's why we need to win. It's going to be a battle royale kind of thing. So we're gathering people as we speak.
Frost's heart suddenly felt heavy. Kaba. He and his friends would never rely on him again. Hit looked to Champa, but said nothing.
Oh, I should probably mention that the main prize is a wish on the Super Dragon Balls.
Huh. That was interesting. Maybe Frost could do something good with a wish on those? Prove to his former friends that he had changed? Hit glared back at his new student.
We're in.
Of course, Lord Champa, we're in. Champa shook his head.
And remember, Hit, we have to win.
This sentiment was terrifying. Not only were there 11 other universes, but the likes of Goku and Vegeta might not be the strongest ones within those universes. Do they stand a chance? Hit was formidable, true, but there was a noticeable gap between himself and Kaba and the assassin. Yeah, sure, Butamo and Vegeta, they'd be probably considered too, but how many Saiyans could Kaba muster? Would they even take this chance? Before the cat god and his angelic attendant left, Hit looked to them.
You may want to ask the Namekians for aid.
Oh, yes. Piccolo was a pretty powerful fighter from Universe 7. If they had their own version of Piccolo, that could be handy.
Oh, that's right. They better do some of that fusing of theirs. That would be good.
Fusing? Hit quickly explained that whole ritual to his pupil, and quite frankly, it sounded scary and ugh. But he didn't have much more time to think, as Hit's training regimen got even harder after that. Do you think we can win?
I don't know.
Hit did not seem bothered by the prospect. I'm sorry, but you don't seem awfully worried by the possibility of us getting erased along with the entire multiverse.
I can think of worse ways to perish, Frost. Honor and survival often don't come in pairs.
Frost grimaced. If it was only just about us, I'd be less worried, but this is the entire universe we're talking about here.
Then train better, so that doesn't happen.
I mean, he had a point. Frost thought to himself that he should be mortified by this revelation, but instead, he felt excited in a way. Oh, that was a silly notion. He should be devastated thinking this way, so callously. But he couldn't help himself, and he was awaiting this event with a certain degree of positive anticipation. Seems like the influence of his mentor, or stupidity of his mentor, had rubbed off on him. And so, a few days later, the team began to assemble. As expected, Ultimagetta was there along with Batamo from their previous tournament. There was Hit and Frost, as well as two Namekians, who were introduced as Salnel and Pilina. Frost could feel a certain degree of sadness emanating from them. There was also a ball-like individual called Dr. Rota, but nobody really knew much about him nor what he could do. I guess they'd find out in the ring. And of course the last three were Kaba and two Saiyan women, one of which Frost could recognize. He knew her as Caulifla, and he remembered other Saiyans speaking about her as some kind of rowdy renegade type leading a bunch of biker gang ruffians. Yeah, that must have been her. He didn't recognize the other one though, but she seemed to look rather stressed being there. He could relate to that. For a second, he felt that his gaze and Kaba's had met, but neither started a conversation. Oh, that was bad. Hit then explained their plan, acting as the universe captain. Do not engage until the time was right. Strike only when they have to. Be precise. There was not much small talk, and Frost regretted that. He didn't know if Kaba was mad at him, disappointed, or just simply being focused. No time for any pleasantries. Yeah, that's true. They did have to fight for their own survival. Frost took a look around. He could see Universe 7, but wait, who's that guy with the halo? Was that? Had to be. So, they'd resorted to that, huh? Seemed that everyone was truly desperate. No universe was safe. That's when Frost realized that this being, this Freeza, was calling him over to have a meeting with him. Oh, I've heard so much about you. Apparently we're rather alike. Freeza grinned wickedly. So I've heard. Do you enjoy ruling by force? I used to. Freeza laughed softly. Well, perhaps we can work together and show our combined force. How about it? Would you like to work with me, friend? Frost pondered this for a while. Not that long ago, he would have gladly accepted this deal to ensure his own survival. But now he could easily see why he had been warned about this individual. He decided to act coy, however. This might give him the upper hand later. Yes, I'd be delighted. After all that was over, he shared a moment with Hit, who nodded at him.
Good. Don't lose sight of that one. He's your problem now.
He had noticed Carver's puzzled gaze, but before they could even attempt a conversation, Frost trying to explain what he was doing, the tournament had begun. It was sudden, fast, and brutal, as if time were flowing 10 times faster than usual. But Frost and his teammates, they were on the back foot. He had quickly realized that Goku and Vegeta here were formidable, as they had managed to eliminate 6 people in total almost immediately, within seconds. He, however, was locked into a fast exchange against the one who called himself Katopestra, a pretty loudmouth and irritating fellow from Universe 3. And as that fight went on, he noticed that Universe 9 was ganging up on Universe 7, which ended badly for them, as they were the first to fall and the first to be erased. They could now see that the gods, they weren't joking about erasure. For a moment, the level of intensity around the ring reduced a bit, as most of the fighters had lost some of the gumption to fight, feeling bad for the fallen. But this somber air didn't last for long. Frost then saw Krillin and 18 fighting against Shosa and Majora, as Krillin was able to quite cleverly get rid of the blind warrior. He celebrated his friend's success, but still, it would have been very easy to have kicked him out of the ring just now when he wasn't looking. But he resisted. He heard Hit's words echoing in his head.
Honor and survival often don't come in pairs.
So instead of just sneaking in, pulling some kind of trick, he was able to get out of Katopestra's field of vision and shouted, "Hey, Krillin! Think fast!" The monk jumped, startled, but took a much safer position, ready for Frost's challenge.
Thanks, buddy. You had a real opportunity to chuck me out when I wasn't looking. Well, I'm glad you didn't do that.
The two smiled with respect and began fighting again, though it was very clear that Frost was stronger here, and soon he did kick Krillin out of the ring. But at least this time, it was a fair exchange, and Krillin knew he had lost. He was congratulated by the gods and Frost gave him a thumbs up. It was weird. It's us or them, but this felt right. Of course, Android 18 didn't see it that way, so Frost had to fend her off for quite some time, until he was able to lose her along some of those scary-looking Pride Trooper people, them being bigger distractions. It was clear to him that the one they were protecting, this meditating person called Jiren, he was the real threat here. He tried to feel him out and maybe try a sneak attack, but he was blocked by the likes of Dispo, the rabbit-like individual. He was ridiculously fast. Even more warriors were falling, with Universe 10 soon following in the footsteps of 9. The first one to fall from their team was Watamo. It was sad to see him fall, but Gohan had been fighting like Frost had never seen him before. He was incredible. They even exchanged some hits themselves. The next one to fall was Dr. Rota, who as far as Frost could tell, didn't really do much. And then Vegeta fell. Frost had a short fight with Master Roshi, who then got knocked out by the Iceling. The old-timer was rather potent, but Frost was just simply stronger again. However, what happened next was completely unexpected. But gladly, it was in Universe 6's favour. First, that Kale girl from their team had seemingly gone crazy. Then she was stampeding around, just knocking people out left, right, and centre in this weird Super Saiyan transformation he'd never seen before. And then, Jiren woke up. Goku didn't even manage to lay a finger on him. It was that shocking. Then, he had to resort to his Spirit Bomb. Now, Frost knew of this technique after talking with Goku and training with him. But this, what was meant to be his ultimate attack, failed horribly. As in, Jiren was able to knock it back at Goku, and for a moment, it seemed like Frost's former mentor and friend had evaporated. But no, he came out of it changed, and he was able to hit Jiren after doing so. Wow. He was able to find Hit in the middle of the battlefield to tell him, "Do you have any idea what that thing is?" Hit looked up casually, and then down again.
None. Seems like something that angels do.
Still, the transformation didn't last forever, and finally, after this impressive showcase, Son Goku fell. Well, not entirely, as Frost could then spot Frieza charging him up with some of his own energy.
I'm gonna take that one down. If I fail, it's all on you, Frost.
Wait, Hit! Hit! But it was too late, as Hit had decided to challenge Jiren, the strongest opponent in the ring. No pressure. And whilst this duel was rather impressive, Jiren was again just superior, leaving Frost in a state of total shock. This was the first time also, right now, that Kaba had spoken to him since being led away by the SDF. "We cannot let Hit's sacrifice be in vain, Frost." He was shocked. "Kaba, not now. After the tournament."
Frost smiled. Always the optimist. It wasn't easy to watch Frieza wailing on Kaba. He could blow his cover, go in and help, but that didn't really matter at this time because Frieza would have chucked them both out if he tried anything funny. Meanwhile, he saw Goku returning to form, taking both Caulifla and Kale on. He couldn't stand behind, he knew what he had to do. He had to help out his friends, even if it risked his own place in the contest. As Frieza was going all in on Kaba, Frost had no choice but to charge at him with great power.
What? What do you think you're doing, you imbecile? We had an agreement!
Frost smirked.
Fighting for my team. You will regret that. I will show you my true golden form.
As his enemy transformed, Frost pretended to be on the back foot for a brief moment, to lull Frieza into a sense of security. Then he transformed as well, much to Frieza's astonishment. The Space Emperor cackled.
This is going to be more even than I thought. Oh, I'm going to enjoy this.
They clashed, producing a spectacular light show of gold and white. This being amidst plenty of intense events going on around them too. Kale and Caulifla, the Potara, the Fusion, Kefla. She could win here. But at this point, Frost was focused on something else entirely. He must defeat Frieza. As the Emperor was getting the upper hand, Frost could feel that he was the more experienced one of the two. But he attempted one last tactic. He knew that all of this training he'd done with Hit had to have amounted to something at this point. He took a moment, and then suddenly skipped a tenth of a second, much to Frieza's surprise. What the? It was enough to catch him off guard, and then Frost was able to slap him with his tail, and Frieza was out. He was livid.
You will pay for this betrayal!
He yelled, preparing a death beam aimed at Frost's head. But before he was able to do anything else, Beerus caught his arm.
I'm in a rather good mood today, Frieza, but the Omni Kings may not be.
Frieza looked at the GP and then Zeno. They probably would be crazy enough to do such a thing. He pulled his arm away from Beerus and simply sulked. Frost then had to drop his golden power quickly, as to not lose further stamina. But he quickly realized that even the power of Kefla or the Namekians had not been enough to secure them victory. It was now only himself and Kaba, the last standing members of the team.
Well, looks like it's just you and me now.
Kaba smiled.
Like old times. Thanks for having my back here. Kaba, this might be the end, and I'm sorry I lied to you all, but if this means anything to you, my time in the Force, with Universe 7, and in the future, changed me. You changed me. You're my best friend, Kaba, and I just wanted you to know that.
Kaba patted him on the shoulder.
This won't be the end, friend. Let's show them what we're made of.
They fought valiantly, though at times they had to team up with Universe 7, especially against this creature named Aniraza. But they knew they would eventually have to go against their friends sometime from the Twin Universe. It was inevitable. Soon, it was just Toppo, Vegeta, Goku, Kaba, Frost, and Jiren left. Frieza was still taunting Toppo from the stands, and that resulted in Toppo's transformation. But Vegeta was able to deal with that threat. When Jiren then had to threaten Vegeta, Kaba intervened despite Frost's protests. Vegeta then muttered,
Kaba, don't be foolish.
But Kaba wasn't listening. As he attacked Jiren, soon Frost joined in, but neither of them were even remotely able to hurt the Grey Pride Trooper. He blasted them away, knocking out Kaba from the ring, and Frost got knocked out cold, falling somewhere in the debris. Someone then woke him up.
Wake up, Daily Boy.
When he came to, he saw... What was his name? Yeah, Android 17. That was impossible. He saw him got wiped out a while ago.
Why didn't you kick me out when you had the chance?
Would have been a jerkish move. Also, I think this whole thing's kind of dumb.
What?
This whole tournament? Why erase us? Because they're too lazy to take care of it all, that's what. Frost chuckled, spitting out some blood.
Well, you never know. Gods, am I right?
17 looked at his team in the rafters. They hadn't seen him just yet.
What's happening?
Oh, Goku got better at that Ultra Instinct thing. He might have a chance. Also, your team's kind of worried about you too. And hopeful. Frost looked at the rafters as well, watching his team trying to look for any signs of their fallen comrade on the battlefield. You know, I wonder if those Super Dragon Balls can restore everything. All I wanted was a boat cruise, but hey, I guess that's dumb too. But just then, Goku's body gave up, making Jiren visibly upset about winning in such a manner. Oh well, there goes my chance. 17 looked kinda grim. Frost then contemplated his response. No, we still have a chance. And when Jiren kicked Goku out from the ring, Frost was the one to pull him back in. There were many screams from the stands, some of relief from his team, and then Champa screaming, "What are you doing? You're kicking him in the wrong direction!" Hello, Master Goku. Frost, it's nice to see you. Question, can we beat this guy? Perhaps together? And even though Toppo was giving a speech that had awoken new power within Jiren, and even though he was much more powerful, the teacher and the student had managed to prevail. But in order to do this, both Frost and Goku had to jump out of the ring, leaving 17 in. No! Why? You could have won that! Why? Frost smiled at Hit, then at 17. We won. What? You little... Lord Champa, it's a little bit too late for that. As Champa cooled down to say his last words to Beerus, he was still mad at Frost, but Hit placed a hand on his shoulder and nodded. You did good. Kaba sighed deeply. Well, at least we're going out together. Frost smiled. See you all soon. And they indeed flickered for a moment, but then, the next thing they saw, they were back in their universe. What? But we were supposed to be erased. Champa looked surprised too. Where is Vardos? Frost looked at Champa and smiled. Number 17 wanted to bring every erased universe back. Frost looked at the light in the sky. Then Champa got serious for a moment. Don't expect me to thank you for this, brother. He directed his words to the sky. Kaba then approached Frost. You did it. You had your part in it. Everyone owes you a lot. No, it was mostly Goku and 17. Kaba smiled widely. When I tell everyone at home what you did, they'll clear you of all charges, I'm sure of it. You're a hero, Frost. For real this time. One day, I would love to return, but I still think I have much to learn. Kaba looked surprised. Frost, don't worry, I'll come visit. He offered a hand which Frost shook, and then the two friends embraced. Hit poked him on the shoulder. Let's go, before Lord Champa remembers something to waste our time further. We can skip it, then. This caused Hit to grimace, but then smirk slightly. Don't get too cocky. They watched Frost and his mentor leave. For the first time in a long, long time, Frost felt at peace with himself. But this time skip ability felt just too promising to give up now. One day, he would do something good with it. Someday, he would return as a real hero. And that's where we end things. Hope you folks enjoyed that. If you like the story of Frost turning good, check out the tale of his Universe 7 doppelganger Freeza doing the same thing. And as always, I shall see you in the next video. Catch you later!